Presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Senator Bola Tinubu, takes his campaign to Niger State today. But in a rather unusual manner, what was expected to be a campaign speech turned out to be just a few words, and the event ends. They've been described as the possible dark horses in the presidential race time and again. And with 72 days to go, we'll have a sit-down with two parties that have been described as disruptors on their strategy and policy plans. Well, hello and welcome to the nation's flagship political show. I'm Kayode Okikulu here in the nation's commercial capital, Lagos. Well, we'll start off with our countdown. It is exactly 72 days to the 2023 presidential election. What you can describe simply as a celebration of democracy. And it's simple. The majority will have their way. The minority this time around will have their say. So it's elections and not war. So we're counting down exactly 72 days to the election. So stay with us as we continue our coverage in the build-up to this very big one for Nigeria's democracy. But as we keep our eyes on that, let's move over to the campaign arena. And it was quite, what you could say, a different kind of outing for the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who took his campaigns to Niger State today. Don't forget, he was in Kaduna at the last outing, but this time around, he took his campaign to Niger State. But what played out today is quite unlike other campaign rallies where he addressed the crowd and, of course, shared some promises and his campaign manifesto. Well, as early as 7 a.m. today, a crowd of party faithful had thronged the Mina trade fair complex, awaiting his arrival. Eventually, he arrived in company of governors of Niger State, the whole state, of course, the governor of Kebbi, Kano, Nasarawa, Jigawa, and the Senate president, in company, of course, of his running mate as well. Well, the ecstatic crowd was, however, taken aback when, without any welcome address, Senator Tinubu mounted the campaign podium and shouted, "Niger, Seibago." The crowd shouted back and says, "Nigeria far." And while the crowd responded, the APC presidential candidate returned to his seat, and the master of ceremony announced the end of the program exactly 7 minutes after arriving the venue. Context, his last outing in Kaduna State, he spoke for about 5 minutes, so you can understand how the crowd felt when he just uttered those words and the event ended. But that was not the only thing he did in Kaduna State. He also inaugurated his campaign office, which was donated by a publisher of a newspaper in the country, Mohammed Malagi, at the Western Bypass. So lots of activities on that end, but let's tell you what's going on at the nation's seat of power. Well, President Muhammadu Buhari is away in the United States for that US-Africa summit, alongside other African leaders on the invitation of President Joe Biden of the United States. They're in Washington, D.C. As we speak. But while he's away, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, today chaired the Federal Executive, that's a FEC meeting, and quite a number of issues were raised. But at the end, we got some insight into the issues that were deliberated upon. The Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, said that the meeting reviewed and approved the 2022 draft whistleblower bill to strengthen the fight against corruption and protect whistleblowers. The Council also ratified a new finance bill to support the implementation of the 2023 budget. And on the effect of the new Naira note on the economy, the Finance Minister says so far there's been progress, and she hopes that by the CBN's due date, a lot of old notes would have been mopped up. Let's head over to the legislature what played out at the Senate specifically today, where lawmakers actually debated that policy, the CBN's latest cash withdrawal policy and the whole drive towards the cashless policy. It was originally scheduled for yesterday, that's the debate, but it was pushed until today, and the debate happened. All eyes were on the red chamber to see what exactly the senators would come up with. Remember that a committee had been tasked to look into the latest policy and come up with recommendations such that there could be a debate and the Senate can weigh in. So I'd like you to listen to the debate on the floor of the Senate, and we'll tell you the resolutions that were reached on that all-important policy by the CBN.
Central banks should reconsider their decision and put us back the same amount they had in Abia, Lagos, Kano. They should do 500,000 per day for individual, and they will do 3 million per day for corporate. That will cover any fear of anybody.
The CBN approved POS operators and registered them and took monies from them, no matter how little. And now, those people can only do so little. It took so many people off the roads. It took all our unemployed graduates off the streets. Now, they're going to be thrown back with this policy if an amendment is not done. Mr. President, there's a big elephant in the room. Why is this happening during an election period? Why is it that it is coming now when we have an election just a little over a month ahead? There is a need to be flexible in what we are doing.
So at the end, there was really no earth-shattering or landmark resolution, as some may have expected. But this is what the Red Chamber eventually resolved to do. They asked that the CBN should considerably adjust the withdrawal limits in response to public outcry. They also asked that the committee should, of course, continue its aggressive oversight function. That was actually the term that was used to ensure that the CBN stays with its commitment to flexible adjustment of the withdrawal limit and periodically report outcome to the Senate. Now, the third resolution by the Senate is that they should support the bank on the continuous implementation of transformational payments and financial industry initiative in line with the CBN's mandate. So in case you were looking to the CBN, or at least the Senate this time around, to hear what was going to come out, those are the resolutions. That aside, again, it's the third day since the commencement of the PVC collections nationwide, and we would like to just show you how much of activity is going on in that area, plus some other trending political stories. Here's your political roundup.
The Independent National Electoral Commission says it is recording a large turnout of citizens showing up to collect their permanent voter cards. The resident electoral commissioner for the Federal Capital Territory, Mr. Yahaya Bello, says thousands of PVCs have been distributed to their owners since the collection exercise started on Monday. Mr. Bello is upbeat of the readiness of the commission to distribute PVCs to all registered voters yet to get them.
Every day we meet to ensure that a new system is devised to ensure smooth collection of these PVCs.
In the south side of the country, the commission is assuring voters in Akwa Ibom State that the 2023 general elections will be free and fair. Speaking at the stakeholders forum in Uyo, the state capital, INEC National Commissioner Mrs. May Agbamuche allayed the fear of political parties insisting on credible polls.
This particular INEC is going to conduct a very, very good election, a fair election, and the people of Akwa Ibom can trust us.
The governor of Delta State, Senator Ifeanyi Okowa, has advised the governorship candidate of the APC, the All Progressives Congress in the state, Senator Ovie Amoagege, to focus on issue-based campaigns and warned against casting aspersions and resort to attacks on his administration in the ongoing campaigns in the state. The chief press secretary to Delta State Governor, Mr. Olisa Fejaka, told journalists in Abuja that the state governor is surprised at the attacks on his personality and especially what is described as the manipulation of facts to score cheap political points. Mr. Fejaka, who ruled out the chances of the governorship candidate of the APC in the state, advised him to focus on his manifesto as well as avoid comments that are capable of inciting violence in the state.
Stop casting aspersions on individuals. Sheriff Oboro is on ground. He didn't get there by accident. He got there because he's popular.
The Deputy National Chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Ilia Damagum, says he is confident of the presidential candidate of the PDP, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, winning Yobe State during the 2023 presidential election with the introduction of BVAS by the Independent National Electoral Commission. Mr. Damagum was speaking in Damaturu, the state capital, while receiving groups and associations that defected to the PDP from the All Progressives Congress. He is optimistic of the 2023 general elections, witnessing improvement as those who depend on rigging elections will be disappointed.
I'm optimistic that if this thing pulls through, there will be a lot of surprises.
A member of the Zamfara State House of Assembly, Mr. Salisu Usman, has been advocating for voting rights of the people living with disabilities in the country ahead of next year's general elections. He said people with disabilities are citizens and have a right to vote and should not be disenfranchised. Honorable Usman, who himself is living with disability, expressed confidence in the ability of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to make provision for people living with disabilities to vote with ease in the 2023 general elections.
People with disability are Nigerians and has a voting right, and the registers has voters. So you cannot skip them out from having their constitutional right.
Right, let's get into the first leg of our conversation tonight, and it is with the new Nigeria People's Party, the NNPP, which has vowed to make a showing in the coming election. So we're going to be taking a look at the strategy and the policy plans of the party. Essentially, this will help you make your decision. And I know there's lots of candidates, 18 of them vying for presidency, but breaking these issues down should make it less cumbersome for you, the voter. After all, we have 72 days to go. And joining us to do that tonight is the national chairman of the new Nigeria People's Party. He joins us live from our Abuja studio. Good evening, Professor Rufai Alkali. It's good to have you on the program.
Hello, Kayode. Good evening.
Oh, good evening. We'll talk about the manifesto of your candidate. I know he's asked Nigerians to create time to study that manifesto, and we'll get into some of the details. But some recent occurrences, as it were, and you were part of that meeting, I believe, between your party, the NNPP, and APGA. I know there had been speculations about a possible collaboration between your party and another, and some life was given to that, it will seem, with that meeting on Monday. So if you could tell Nigerians, seeing those images and seeing the speculations are, what exactly is the nature of this collaboration, if you will?
Thank you, Kayode. Well, I want to thank you first for this invitation for this program for today. And we are very happy with what channels have been doing, especially in advancing the cause of democracy in this country over the past few months, especially since we started campaigns nationwide. Now, I know that whenever NNPP is mentioned, and then other parties are mentioned, there's always a lot of interest. But I believe now, Kayode, you'll do me a favor, that I will not disclose anything in detail of what we are discussing with APGA or this presidential candidate for now. In our own strategic plan is to do a lot of homework behind the scenes. Then when we have reached a point of talking, we can come out to the press and to the general public and speak. But for now, I don't want to go into it.
So indeed, you confirm that there are discussions going on with APGA?
No, we have said that NNPP, its doors are open. Because what you're talking about here, we're talking about the future of our country. Is not a personal matter. It's not an individual matter. It's the issue of the future of our country. And we have also been saying consistently that anybody or group of persons that share our ideals, share our vision, our aims and objectives about the future of our country, we'll be willing to talk to them, but on the basis of mutual respect, so that whatever happens, it is for the benefit and glory of our country, Nigeria.
Indeed. I know your party has said time and again that, well, it will not be going into any alliance with either the APC or the PDP. So saying this will make a lot of people wonder, and you'd understand if speculations are rife that is a party now, stepping back on that stance which it had that, there's not going to be any sort of alliance. But particularly ABGA. ABGA is a strong party, a lot of people know, especially in the southeastern part of Nigeria. So is there any reason why ABGA is the choice? I mean, without, of course, going into as much details, but indeed to let people know what is going on so there will be less speculations about what the state of things are.
Well, I think the issue of other political parties you mentioned, PDP and APCs, these parties, they feel they are too big. They feel that they don't need anybody today. They believe they have already won the elections. They are just waiting for the day they will be sworn in as president of this country. So, and I think most of us who had been part of these political parties before, knowing their antecedent and the way they are doing things, we know that we are going to end up with the same trouble we are having today. So for now, over the past few months, what has been happening is that some of them who could not be able to secure the kind of, massive support they were expecting from Nigerians, they kept on, throwing the kite, asking one presidential candidate or the other to step down for them. And we said this is a democracy where the election should hold. And if you want election to hold, and then you have now the opportunity to go and campaign and present your case to Nigeria, why do you want somebody to step down for you? Why not go and face the people and then tell them what you're going to do for them differently from what you have been doing in the past? So that's why sometimes we are not amused with what they are saying, all this, dragging our party that we are going to do this for them, we are going to do this. We are very serious people, we are very committed to the transition in this country. And we don't want anybody to undermine in whatever form.
I mean, while you say, Prof, that you don't want to give out much details about what's going on, just right after that meeting, I mean, your spokesperson, Mr. Agbo Major, is quoted as saying...
Kayode, you'll be the first person to know when the time to speak.
I understand.
The first person to know when the time comes for us to speak.
Of course, I appreciate that.
I promise you.
I appreciate that. But just to clear the air, because some information is out there already. So he said that whatever arrangement will likely come into play... I don't know if you can hear me, Prof. I imagine you can hear me.
Kayode?
Right. Are you with me now, Prof?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Oh, that's great. I was just going to, just take it as the last point on this one, because it's important to make. Your spokesperson, Mr. Agbo Major, is quoted as saying that whatever arrangement will likely come into play, we'll see whoever is coming queue behind your presidential candidate. So that much is out there, even though you don't want to divulge as much information, but that much is out there, and it's reported in the daily. As a Tribune spoke to him. So I know that you had issues with the Labour Party trying to come up with an alliance earlier on, but really at this stage, how sure are you that a political party like ABGA will want to queue up behind your candidate, knowing fully well that it already has its own presidential candidate who was in that meeting as well?
Kayode, you are persistent and you are insistent. And I told you that some of the strategic issues, I don't think it's time for us to share them now. And I think, the whole thing is that we don't have any issues with Labour. Labour is just an emerging force in this country, just like NNPP. Because when we started the journey, a lot of Nigerians took us for granted, especially the two major political parties or two older political parties. And we have told them that no, it's good for them to underestimate us. For us, we have our strategies, we have our plans of actions, we have ways of doing things which are completely different from what they have been doing, the older political parties. And again, without, trying to divert your attention from your question that you are persistently asking, our own concern is just to build a base, because this is a mass movement. The NNPP is a national movement. And if you look at the kind of acceptance the party has received from Nigerians, to us it's unprecedented, given the time since we did the merger in March this year. So for us, like we said, our doors are open, and any strategic discussion we have with other persons or group of persons, we'll keep it to our chest for now until the time comes for us to share it with the rest of the country.
But Prof, is this a sign of weakness, maybe? Because your candidate has been vehement, very confident, saying that, well, with NNPP, we're going to clear the election. So with this move to perhaps seek some sort of collaboration, merger, is it that the signs are now getting clearer for NNPP that maybe you can't do this alone? Maybe the other parties have more power. Is this a sign of weakness?
No. You have forgotten that every day counts in politics. And you also every vote counts in politics. So if you are going to spend time going to various states in the country, various local government, various communities, reaching out to people, canvassing for support, conveying our messages of goodwill, educating them about our manifesto, does it stop us from talking to other people in other political parties that we think or they think we are going to collaborate at a particular stage in the process? It could not be now, it could be later. What is important is that so far we are comfortable with where we are, and I want to assure you that our leader and the presidential candidate, Senator Rabi Musa Konkoso, has been going around. In the first phase of our campaign, if you see, it's different from what others have been doing in the past. In the past, what you are seeing even now is how the political party, what they are doing. And like the case you have shown in Niger State today, after spending a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of energy, you come and speak for 1 minute, and then you say it's over. Why do you go there? It means that you are not sure of what you are doing. The fatigue has started setting in. So we have several layers. And one of the first layer that our leader, the presidential candidate of NNPP, Senator Rabi Musa Konkoso, has been doing is a straightforward one that we spend all the time, initial months, to go and reach out to our communities, to our people, to reconnect with them. Some of them we have not visited for a long time. Some of them have been, facing difficult challenges, either relating to environmental factors or whatever. Some of them have lost so many things. So the first thing is to reconnect with the people. After doing that, then you come and now begin the big bang. And I think by that time, Nigeria will know the difference between oil and water.
We'll get into maybe the projections, because I know politicians usually do your projections and you try to see where your chances are and where they're not. But let's talk about your party's manifesto, and quite a number of points there, and you've maybe touched on some of them, really. Revamping the economy is key for your candidate, expectedly, really. I think it just ranks top for all candidates, the economy, security, but particularly around the economy. I said that, you have an economic plan centered around people, their family, improving income level, strengthening the purchasing power of every Nigerian citizen. Recently, we saw figures of the multi-dimensional poverty level of a country. 133 million Nigerians are multi-dimensionally poor, according to the NBS. And I know that the NNPP, particularly your candidate, has this, movement, the Kwankwasia movement, the movement for the Talakawa, he says. And those are regarded as the masses, the poor people. Now, if your party is saying, your candidate is saying, you want to lift people out of poverty, some might ask, isn't that contradicting, the support base you have? So who will be left to support your party? Who will be left in that Talakawa movement, which your party derives its strength from? So is there a way to delineate that for you?
Well, I think, up to recently, the popular debate and intellectual debate has been that development and democracy are two sides of the same coin. But in recent times, the focus of Nigerians is that also the economy, the issue of economy and security are also two sides of the same coin. Therefore, you cannot tackle the issue of security in Nigeria without tackling the issue of the economy frontally. And you cannot tackle the issue of the economy without tackling the issue of security frontally. Therefore, that's part of the manifesto of a presidential candidate is that these things are going to be done simultaneously. And that's why, for example, he placed a lot of emphasis in saying that the security sector now is undermanned. Given the total population of Nigeria, given the size of the country, given the complexities of the security challenges, both the police and the military, they are totally undermanned, including the other security services. Therefore, the attention should be on those areas. And in tackling these areas also, it is hoped that employment will also be created. Why? Because if you don't secure the country, even the oil that now we have been depending on over the years, now we are not exporting as much as what we should export based on the OPEC quota. So, and then there's a lot of leakages, a lot of thefts, a lot of, wastage, a lot of corruption all over the place. So unless this thing are tackled frontally, it's not going to be possible. So that's why the first thing is to make sure that you make sure you move a number of these youth away from the street and engage them in this kind of services, and they will be very useful and effective. But at the same time, in addressing the economy, the fundamental is also the education, because what everybody knows about is Rabi Musa Konkoso, and you can never take it away from him, and there's no presidential candidate today that can match him with that record, is what he did when he was the governor of Kano, so in promoting education at every level, providing scholarship for students, women, young men and young boys, both Kano indigenous or non-indigenous. He established several universities. So he knows the system very, very well. And that's why today he also said the first he's going to do from day one is to make sure that he scrap all these fees that are being now imposed on parents and children, especially in terms of WAEC, NECO, NAPTIV, and even JAM, so that people will be able to have access to education. Access is the most critical issue. So we believe that if you educate the citizenry, it will make it much easier for people to stand and protect the system. Now, the question you asked about the Talaka was, do you believe that every Konkosia is a poor man or every poor man is a Konkosia? No, that's not there's no correlation between the two. Konkosia is a part of a movement that is in defense of justice, in the defense of progress. And that these young men and young women who are passionate about what Senator Rabi Musa Konkosa is doing in Kano is now being translated at the national level, saying that we must defend our country, we must defend our sovereignty, we must defend our society, so that everybody will have a role to play. So we hope that because if they move away from being the poor and become, they can afford a reasonable condition of living, then doesn't mean that they are no more relevant in politics. It's empowerment. Every city must be empowered. Therefore, all the issues are related: security, economy, education, and everything. And what we are saying here today is that having gone through all the levels, as a governor, as a senator, as a minister, he has touched every level of governance. And it's easy for him to go and
let's wind down on this.
Hitting the ground and start running. He doesn't have to wait for 6 months or 7 months or 8 months to construct a government to run this country.
Let's wind down on this point.
He has a vast network and goodwill around the country. And that's why everybody is saying that.
I don't know if you can hear me. We have to anchor soon. But the point is, I know politicians have been accused of weaponizing poverty, which, people say that's why a lot of people throng around them. It's easy to, engage in vote buying and all this tokenism. So it's important to tell Nigerians whether or not this contradicts with the Talakawa movement, which means essentially the commoner. And, you've made that point. But on a final note, he also promised that there will be an improvement in terms of income level of Nigerians. I know the Labour Party promised, between 80,000 and 100,000. We've seen other parties also promise as much. Is that also a promise you're making to Nigerians, that the minimum wage will be higher than it is right now, and at what level?
Public policy, at some stage is not an individual matter. It's a collective matter. What the president can do is to commit himself to the principles that the conditions of the civil servant today is not the best for any civil servant in this country. The fact that what you can say, the wage that is our citizens earn cannot take them home. But apart from that, even those who manage to survive through 35 years or 60 years and retire, they don't get their benefits. So while you are serving, you are in trouble. After you finish, you are in trouble. And everybody requires this protection, a safety net for the ordinary citizen, so that he can live. Apart from employees, civil servants, remember there are also farmers, there are also traders, there are also artisans. All of them, some of them are no regular salary earners. But the system must be able to protect them through inclusiveness. And that's why one of the strategies our presidential candidate is adopting is what you call the community participation and reorientation program, where from the world level to the local government level to the state level to the zonal level to national level, there will be a series of community committees. Wow. 11 which will comprise the traditional rulers in the place, the clergy, the ulama, the youth leaders, and then the woman leader, and everything.
But I just wanted to be sure.
Everybody will be involved in managing the resources that is going to be now deployed from national to the lower level.
So
but
you're
these
saying,
policies
in essence,
have to be now
Prof,
work through the National Assembly,
so that
everybody will be involved.
Right, so there's no target, there's no goal.
These are critical stages that are not there available to other political parties.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me. So you're saying, in essence, that for now there is no goal for or a target for what the minimum wage would be like if your candidate were to win the election.
Kayode, your voice is a bit low. Can you raise your voice?
Believe me, I am actually speaking almost at the top of my voice. But the question is, are you putting a figure to it? Are you saying there's no figure to the minimum wage?
You are talking about a policy.
Right.
A policy has to go through processes.
Okay.
For example, a governor cannot sit down today and say, I'm going to do minimum wage. You have to go through a House of Assembly.
All right.
At the national level, the president cannot sit down and say, this is what I'm going to do. It has to go through National Assembly. You have to carry all the stakeholders and involve them.
Well, so thank you, Prof. I think that point has been made.
NNPP is offering something different, something fresh.
Right, I think the point has been made. You're essentially saying that, well, you wouldn't put a figure until there's some sort of deliberation across all levels. But I would like to thank you so much, Prof. Thank you for your interventions on those issues. We've been speaking with Professor Rufai Alkali, who is the national chairman of the NNPP. Joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you again, Prof, for your time tonight.
Thank you very much, Howdy.
All right, so that's the first leg of our conversation. But we'll take a break now, and when we return, we'll turn our attention to the Labour Party. Some recent events within the party, and the campaign trail of Mr. Peter Obi comes under the spotlight in a moment with our guest, as you can see, Dr. Shina Fagbero Byron. Stay with us. Well, you're welcome back. Now to the party which seeks to upset the, 23-year dynamics of 24 years now, the dynamics of Nigerian politics. I'm talking about the Labour Party. How far with their mission, the manifesto, the campaign trail so far? So let's get into the realm of the Labour Party this evening. We're joined on the program by Dr. Shina Fagbero Byron, who's Director of Operations, Obi-Datti campaign, joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Fagbero Byron, on the program tonight.
Me, Coyote, thank you.
Right. Your campaigns continued in Kogi State yesterday. But aside the speech, the usual manifesto of your candidate, what is turning out maybe prominently in discussions is just how much party supporters attended that event. Apparently, that's now a show of just how much support a party has on ground, and in this case, in Kogi State. And I wonder for you, how was the turnout? Was it disappointing, what you met on ground compared to what your expectations were?
Well, I would say the turnout was brilliant. Brilliant in the sense that Kogi State is an APC state. We had, a number of concerns before we got to the state. Would we have as many people? But, one thing that members of the public have come to accept and realize is that the Obi-Datti movement, as I would put it, is, although is predicated on the Labour Party, which is our party, also has structures that are complementary to the Labour Party. We have, for example, support groups which are don't particularly belong to any political party, but are Nigerians committed to support Peter Obi and Datti Yusuf. We also have a number of indigenous groups that are committed to supporting our candidate and his vice. And at the Kogi rally, we had a huge complement of all. We had the party. And as you know, Labour Party is not exactly a small party. It's not a young party. Labour Party has won elections in this country severally. Labour Party has won governorship elections in Ondo, has won governorship elections in Edo State. And Labour Party is quite formidable, quite frankly. And so, apart from its own membership, it had its own complementary presence. Now, we also had support groups, and they came in the thousands. We had a capacity stadium. We didn't use all the stadium, but essentially the 3/4 of the stadium that we used, was quite full, including the spillouts outside, because a number of people who didn't come in. But the most important thing is that we enjoyed the love of the people. We enjoyed the spontaneity of the crowd. The messages went far and wide. Obviously, our presidential candidate himself has a power of attraction, power of speech, power of communication, demonstrated capacity, and people trust them. So for a large stadium, yes, we did have presence. Initially, people were coming in trickles, but by the time Peter Obi started speaking, there was quite a huge, momentous crowd.
For those who are then disputing, saying maybe it was, 2,000 people in attendance, less than 5,000, what figure, because I imagine you've done your review of what exactly happened, what figure would you put the attendance eventually?
Absolutely. The crowd in that stadium was close to 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. And the reason was this. When we got to Kogi State, we were told that we could not use the venue. And the venue was not approved until about 7 o'clock the night before. Now, a number of people who had come, were misled into believing that our rally would not hold in that venue. So quite frankly, apart from the people you have here, there were a number of people situated elsewhere thinking that we were holding the rally in other places. We got there at 8 o'clock trying to set up. We did not get an approval till 7 p.m. And despite that, and despite all the Twitter messages that went, what you see on screen is about 1/10 of the places people sat. So what you want to do is to times 10. And then we also had an overflow, which is not showing, which was on the pitch itself. So, like they say, statistics are like bikinis. They show some stuff, but what they don't show is also most important. But I can tell you that we had close to a 10,000 population. And those who bothered to view outside, because a number of people didn't come in. And then if you wanted to factor in other grounds that people thought we were going to be, some say it was deliberate, but I can assure you the governor assured us that he didn't know that we were being delayed. It was an issue between the officials at the Sports Council and, of course, overzealous people who thought because it was an APC state, the Labour Party should be frustrated. But in spite of that, we were present, we were vocal, and the states appreciated that they had a visitor.
Right. I mean, quite an interesting analogy you used.
And we were most welcome anyway.
Right. I know that there was this back and forth also with Edo State, which is a PDP state now, Kogi State, an APC state, and there were questions about when you applied for the use of venue and all of that. In this case, for Kogi State, is it a question of not filing for use of that place on time? When exactly did you file, just so that the details and the issues are laid bare?
No, we filed for this. It's a good thing you're bringing it up, because apparently, because it shows that you even abreast of the delays we were given. We filed for the use about a week and a half right? The issue was that we were required to come in. We did. We have letters to show that we had filed for the use of the venue. Now, on the morning of the venue, when we came in to pay for the venue, there was controversy. We were told that we should have passed the letter through the chairman of the Sports Council instead of the director of sports. For me, as an administrator myself, I can see that there were administrative lapses on the parts within Kogi State. Fortunately for us, by 6:30, we got across to the governor, who was totally unaware of this and gave a directive that we should pay. And it was at 7 o'clock that we paid. But between that time, between the morning when we got in and 7 o'clock when we paid, all sorts of Twitters had gone around that Labour Party had been debarred from using the venue. So that in itself discouraged a whole lot of people from coming. It was only at 7 o'clock in the evening that we sort of, sorry, I'm getting my timing wrong. Yes, 7 o'clock in the evening before that we started sending notices around that people should discountenance, you know, the information that we will not be having our rally there. But we did have, you know, those issues, we overcame them. The governor was quite apologetic for the disruption.
Okay, now that we've talked
issues like this in states, we've had issues like this in that apparently may not be too friendly.
Okay, so let's talk about Okay, let's talk about the content itself. I know all of these issues are very important, really, but to the content itself, your candidate reiterated his mantra, as usual, to move Nigeria from consumption to production. And I think that would have resonated well with the people of a state that is home to the Ajaokuta steel plant. Huge investment, huge production capacity, but for 4 decades it has remained largely moribund. So tell Nigerians, because successive governments have tried to do different things with it, tinker with it, what particularly will you do differently with Ajaokuta?
First of all, we'll increase the accountability and transparency around Ajaokuta. The primary thing is that there's so much opaqueness around Ajaokuta. And when you don't have the details, you don't have the facts, you know, things like this happen. Some of the contractual issues around Ajaokuta need to be interrogated. One of the things that Nigerians need to understand, when our principle says that moving from consumption to production, our focus is on the factors of production. By increasing and enhancing the factors of production, you can ensure that a country becomes more productive. And what are the factors of production? The people. Are people appropriately educated to be employers of laborers and creative within the economy? A place like Ajaokuta is like an entire city. What is the kind of education, what are the kind of engagement, what are the kind of training, including skills and technical knowledge that people have that will complement a place like Ajaokuta? That is one. Second thing is the offtake from Ajaokuta. What are the markets like?
Right.
There are issues that have come under Ajaokuta over the past 40 years. But the bottom line has to do with corruption, which our principal is determined to deal with. A lot of it has to do with transparency. A lot of it has to do with trust, public trust.
Well,
a lot of things have to do with the factors of production and the components of what makes a facility like Ajaokuta work. A lot of things have to do with the contracts.
Right, exactly. And let's come to that point.
Deal with
the contract, the transparency, and all of that. Because Ajaokuta, I think, will hit a very important, very deep point for a lot of Nigerians. I wonder if you are aware that there's currently a bidding process for Ajaokuta by, I think 11 firms for concession. The federal government plans to pay hundreds of millions of dollars just to settle the legal issues around that, instead of billions of dollars, which was meant to be paid. So if that is at that stage now, stage of bidding for concession, really, would your candidate then come, because he said he will speak to people who know what to do about it, will he then come and reverse that process and maybe will now start all over again, or he will go with the process that this current government is following through with?
Well, my principle will go with any process that is transparent.
Right.
As long as it is transparent. When you hear Peter Obi talking, he doesn't bellyache about things that people have done. Forward-looking candidates and a forward-looking party like Labour will focus on, if things have been done transparently, we'll take it off from there. So I hope this government is doing whatever they do transparently. But if it's not done transparently, and if there are hiccups, and if there are opportunities for others to complain and, contest the process, then of course we will err on the side of the people, we'll err on the side of transparency, and will ensure that knowledgeable people. You see, the problem in Nigeria most times is that you get round pegs in square holes and vice versa. But the truth be told is that there are a lot of transactions going on. A lot of part of government is transactional, which is unfortunate. The objective should be service delivery. And there should be benchmarks in terms of what service providers who bid for take charge or manage facilities, production facilities like Ajaokuta, like refineries. There are benchmarks.
Particularly because this is your forte.
Are made
Dr. Fagbero Byron, if you can hear me, I know this is your forte and we can go on and on all night with these issues, but I'd like to raise this very important point with you because this is also a major point that has been going around. Yes. Your party reported that Mr. Peter Obi received an emphatic endorsement from the Ibadan Traditional Council. But incidentally, in fact, there was a video that was put out and retweeted largely, but the palace actually came out with a statement off the back of the video that has been circulated. And it said, well, none of that happened. In fact, I'm going to take a quote from the statement saying that in the offensive video being widely circulated by Obi's handlers, High Chief Oyelo Wale was seen praying for the success of the party and that it was not an endorsement. So the question then is, why term that prayer, which a lot of people listen to, as an endorsement? By the way, we're anchoring in a minute, so I hope you can do that in a minute.
Yes, the chief prayed for the success of our candidate, and his prayer was unambiguous. And what will the success of our candidate be, by the way, if not to win the election? The chief also prayed for a Nigeria that was consistent with what Peter Obi presented as his manifesto and his offer. And what he said was that what Peter Obi had been able to articulate in terms of a better Nigeria was in consonance with what the chiefs articulated. So I don't think, mischief makers can split hairs and say it's not an endorsement but a prayer but not an endorsement. If you pray for me and you don't endorse me, I will say amen.
No, the palace is actually the one putting out the statement saying that it is not an endorsement. And he said it for the umpteenth time. Let it be emphasized that Olubado and his cabinet do not and cannot endorse any political party or candidate. So are you taking this as an endorsement, even though the Olubado says it was just a prayer? I hope you know that this has a tendency of even causing disaffection because the traditional institutions are seen to most times be objective and they don't lean to any party whatsoever.
That is true. That is true. Traditional rulers will not endorse. They have never used the word endorse. It is political, the aftermath, the news that comes with the endorsement. They use the words endorsement. Traditional rulers are usually neutral. So yes, I do not say they use the word endorse. They did pray for him, and they prayed for his success.
Well, we have to go now. I said we had 1 minute, but we've overshot that. Dr. Fagbero Byron, I apologize. We have to anchor at this point. But just to note that it was a campaign DG that actually put out that video and said it's an emphatic endorsement. But clearly, the conversation continues. But we'd like to thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you. Dr. Shino Fagbero Byron is the Director of Operations Obi-Datti Campaign. Thank you for your time tonight. Well, that's the program. Always interesting discussing politics. We'll be back tomorrow with even fresher issues. Till then, I'm Kayode Kikilu. Coming up next is Election 101 in 5.